With me now, Republican Congressman Mike Johnson of Louisiana. Congressman, thanks for taking the time this morning.
Hey, Jim. Great. Thanks for having me.
First on impeachment, because of course you've been mentioned as possibly part of the team for the president in a Senate trial. You told me last month that on the question of the president's involvement in holding military assistance from Ukraine, that in your words, that was their conjecture and speculation, that is advisors who testified under oath to this, and there's only one direct witness, and that's Sondland, to Trump's involvement. Now we have, since then, emails, unredacted documents coming out. I'll just quote from one: clear direction from the president, POTUS, to continue to hold. That from an OMB official to a DoD official. I just wonder now, will you grant that the president was involved in this?
Well, I think the president made pretty clear what his intentions were, and we talked about it in detail over the last several weeks, and it was covered in detail in our 14-hour House Judiciary Committee meeting and everywhere else. The president was concerned about corruption overseas. He was concerned about Ukraine, that was listed as the top three most corrupt nation in the world. And he wanted to make sure that American assets, taxpayer dollars, are spent wisely overseas.
Right. But he did it. You'll grant now that the president was involved in this, that it was not just conjecture and speculation on the part of senior officials in the State Department and Defense Department.
Well, no, what we're talking about in the conjecture and speculation is the motivation behind it and what the purpose was. The president's been very clear from the very beginning about this, that he wanted to make sure that those dollars weren't squandered overseas. And in his mind, the mens rea, as we say in the law, the intent behind the supposed offender was not criminal or had no ulterior motive whatsoever. He was doing exactly what he said on the campaign trail and what he said consistently for years, that he's concerned about the use of our money overseas. And he wanted to be a good steward of that. He wanted to make sure that Zelensky
even though just as a practical matter for folks at home who've heard a lot about this before we go on to Iran, even as the concern about Ukraine corruption only started once Joe Biden was running for president, because he was president for a good 2.5 years. And by the way, the Defense Department certified that aid and the Ukraine as fighting corruption in May of last year. So the sudden interest in corruption in Ukraine based on what?
Well, Zelensky ran as a reformer. He ran on a Trump-like platform. He was going to drain the swamp, so to speak, in Ukraine, and it needed draining. The president was very dialed in, keyed in, focused on that, and he wanted to make sure Zelensky was legitimate when he was.
Well, he didn't, as you know, he didn't bring that up in his first call with Zelensky, even though the White House said that he did. But let's move on to Iran. The president says he may discuss releasing the Iran intelligence that led to the killing of Soleimani. He has not done that yet. As you know, the president has repeatedly dismissed U.S. intel agencies and U.S. intelligence, not just on Russian interference in the 2016 election, but regarding Iran. Intel agencies repeatedly assessed that Iran had been complying with the nuclear deal, something that the president dismissed in the past. I just wonder, why should Americans who are listening at home accept today intelligence from the same intelligence agencies that the president has disparaged in the past? Why should they believe this intelligence? I'm just asking, given that the president has so frequently dismissed and disparaged intelligence.
I think you can have confidence in our intelligence community and their assessment of the situation on the ground. As a member of Congress, we get briefings periodically from the Pentagon, top military officials about the situation and the threat assessment around the world. They always and consistently, since I've been in Congress, have listed Iran in the top 2 or 3 threats. They have been effectively aggressors against the U.S. and our allies openly for 40 years.
I'm just asking, you've bought the intelligence, but the president hasn't. I'm just asking why he's buying this intelligence, and why should Americans buy it, in effect, without question, given that the president has repeatedly said you can't trust the intelligence or the intelligence agencies. Poses a problem, does it not?
Well, this is something that, actions speak for themselves. Everyone can see with their own eyes what's happened here. Of course, at the top levels, the classified levels of information, there's deeper insight. Obviously, the Secretary of State's relied upon that. The Joint Chiefs of Staff have presented all this information, and I think all of us can see it. Look, if you look at what Soleimani has been involved in, I mean, he was effectively the ringleader of the exportation of terrorism around that region and around the world. And he openly said in the last couple of weeks that he wanted to attack the U.S. and its allies. I mean, this guy was at the center of all of that.
I get it.
Responsible for the murder of thousands of people and hundreds of Americans. And remember, that they attacked the U.S. embassy.
I'm
took over
aware.
the-
I'm not. Trust me. I'm not defending the guy. I'm just talking about the consequences of the president repeatedly attacking the intelligence agencies. I do want to ask you about the president's repeated threat now to attack cultural sites in Iran. He tweeted it, and then last night, as he returned, he again said we should be able to do this. It's a war crime. It's certainly against the laws of war. And I've spoken to people inside the Pentagon today who say it's against the laws of war. Do you condemn the president's threat to attack cultural sites and, in effect, flout international law on this?
I agree with what Secretary of State Pompeo said clearly on multiple programs yesterday, that we are going to follow international law. We always have and we always will. That was his quote. We believe in that. I do support the president talking tough and acting tough. And look, Iran, these are not rational people. This is an evil regime. They have avowed to attack the U.S. and its allies, and a strong America is good for the whole world. I believe in the doctrine of maintaining peace through our strength. And if you show weakness, it invites aggression. I think the president understands that doctrine very clearly, and he is talking tough because these times call for that. And I don't think we should be second guessing and undermining our own president. As far as Congress is concerned, Jim, I think we need to be more united than ever because we're facing a serious aggressor over there, and we have to stand together.
We'll see the consequences of it in coming weeks and months. Congressman Mike Johnson, thanks very much.
Thanks, Jim.